Nick Dacos is the new Brownlow medal favourite, so surely coaches will start to tag him. Let's find out. Hello and welcome to Fox Sports Lab AFL. I'm Ben Dixon, your host. With me, one of the all-time greats, Jason Dunstall and stats guru Paton. Welcome, boys.
Gentlemen.
Thanks, Dicko.
Well, Chief, it is Dunstall don't argue time, and non-tagging coaches are in your sights. I'll pose the question, Nick Dacos. Why didn't they tag him, and why aren't they tagging all these key playmakers?
Well, they did try on the weekend, but it was very unsuccessful. Let's consider the facts first. Round one, he has 35 touches, probably picks up 2 Brownlow votes. I thought De Goey might have been the best with his 3 goals. Round 2, he has 32, kicks 2, picks up the 3 votes. So he's probably got 5 votes after 2 rounds. Now, they didn't tag him in round 1. They tried tagging him with Lachie Jones, Port Adelaide. Didn't last that long. Did a rubbish job anyway. So if you're going to tag him properly. Now, it's been really interesting out listening to the narrative around it this week. People saying, put an attacking player on him, trying to keep him accountable. They're very good at covering for each other, the back 6 for Collingwood, and I doubt that you'll actually make him accountable because he just follows the footy. So what's wrong with putting a hard tag? It might be old-fashioned. I get that. I'm old. Sue me. But what about playing 17 on 17 and saying we're not going to get beaten by this bloke and manufacture your zone around that? But I would be very happy to have a bloke that's a gun runner, that's disciplined, that will just do a job on him and play 17 against 17.
Well, it's like Ken Hinkley in his presser after the game. They said, how'd you get beat today? And he looked at the guy, asked the question and said, Nick beat us today because he dominated. Al, the taggers. There's not many in the game now, is there?
Well, I mean, one thing with Nick Dacos, I think that, he's so exciting as a young player, and how he can try and evade that tag is he's got so many strings to his bow. If he's got someone sitting on him, they can throw him into the centre bounce, or he can go back and take some kick-ins, and, he's really hard to play on. But they play the Tigers, obviously, Friday night. Damien Hardwick coaching his 300th game, so hats off Dimmer. But in those 300 games, I don't know if he's tagged once. So it's just not in his MO, so I wouldn't expect it this Friday night. I mean, look at some of the numbers Richmond gave up last year to these sort of half-back types. Sam Doherty got 31 disposals, Cumming 26, Hayden Young 31, Tom Stewart 29, and then last week they let Rory Laird get 39 touches. So I guess Dimmer would say Richmond won a lot of those games, but it's going to be hard if Nick runs amok again on Friday night.
Get the message, Dimmer. Don't get beaten by Nick Dacos.
Well, I'm putting him down for 40 plus then off the back of those numbers. Let's talk about LDU. So you mentioned Nick Dacos could have 5 votes in the
This man has 6 to go.
6?
Yep.
So Gill will be LDU, 3 votes, LDU, 3 votes. This guy, he's not unsung hero in a way, but he's one of the best midfielders in the comp, isn't he, Al?
Well, right now you could argue he just about is the best midfielder in the comp. Some of the bigger names have had maybe a little bit of a slower start to the season. Clayton Oliver would probably argue with that. But LDU currently number 1 in the AFL for contested possessions, number 2 for clearances. He's the number 1 Supercoach player, which we love. But I wonder if Finn McGuinness is one of those taggers, and he might be standing next to him in Launceston this weekend.
Well, let's talk about the Derby over in the West, Fremantle. I've been dumping on them for 2 weeks, so I've actually got it right, Jason. I don't know where you've been with Fremantle.
They've just got clearly a lot of problems all over the field. They're the number 1 team in the AFL for winning the ball, disposal-wise, number 1 for marks, and they're last for scoring efficiency. I think Hawthorn and the Bulldogs are the only teams who have scored fewer points. So there's something not working there that Justin Longmuir has to figure out pretty quick.
But they use the uncontested mark game to no advantage whatsoever, so they just chip it backwards, forwards, around half-back, and it doesn't help them at all. They've turned into the old Fremantle. Slow, boring, no dare, and they can't fix up their forward mix. So unless they can get Matt Taberner back playing some good football, get Fife A, fit, and B, contributing up forward, it's not going to happen.
Have you gone soft in your old age? Like, you don't argue you're hitting taggers, which, you're hitting midfielders and you're blowing up. But the Hawks, the heat on the Hawks right now after round 2 is a bit harsh, don't you think?
I agree. Why have I gone soft?
Well, I thought you might have just gone on and whacked the people that are whacking Hawthorn. They've rebuilt. They've got no players. They've got young kids. They've got 1 senior player in Luke Bruce, and that's it.
I actually haven't taken much notice of it, truth be told.
Okay, that's why
It's going to be a long journey for the Hawks.
What about the tackle before we wrap it up in this segment? I want to just say that 4 for Broad is light. It needed to be 5 or 7. I know it's been done to death, but we spoke about the bump and players getting 2 or 3. That tackle deserves 7, in my opinion.
7?
We've got 2 lawsuits, minimum for CTE in the AFL. The head issue is an issue.
Yep.
You know, as a player, once you pin the arms, you have no chance. And to lift, dump, hit, that was a collision on the ground, not contact.
Yeah, hang on a minute. We've just had all this outcry over the bump, and yet players are still bumping. And they didn't make a statement with the suspensions around bumping. So what we want to do is we encourage them to tackle instead of bump. That's the option. to stop them from bumping so that we avoid that head contact. Now they're at least starting to do the right thing. But one of the problems is that the umpire doesn't blow the whistle early enough. So you're hanging on to a bloke, you hang on to a bloke, you hang on to a bloke. He's going to get the ball out eventually. How long do you sit there and hold on to him? And I think the players panic, go, well, I better throw him to the ground. Now, they're not doing that the right way. I agree we have to stamp out that sling tackle. And I think 4's the right suspension. But for you to start saying 5, 6, 7, the air in between the ears is just starting to get a little bit discombobulated, Dicko. I mean, let's be careful about what we're doing here. We want them to tackle. We don't want them to bump to start with. But then blow the whistle a little bit quicker before they have time to sling them to the ground.
I never thought you'd turn into a letterbox and sit on the fence. What do you think, Al?
I mean, I think 4 is about right, and I think probably Cosy Pickett maybe got a bit lucky for only getting 2.
All right, well, the coaches are on notice. Start tagging or your answer to the chief and take out the bump and the sling tackle. It's a promoter's dream. In one corner, we have Ross the boss. In the other corner, we have Brad Scott. Let's get ready to rumble. Jason, I'm getting carried away because I love this. The recycled coaches. One of these coaches is going to go 3-0. The Saints versus Bombers. Who are you going with in this game?
It's a tough game. I found this one of the hardest to pick, Al. Don't know about you. And in the end, I probably let it get a little bit personal because I've got too many mates that barrack for the Bombers and I don't like them. So I ended up going with the Saints. I just think that Ross Lyon might be able to put more of a defensive press on the Bombers than what they've actually experienced in the first couple of weeks. I don't think they've been tested against the Hawks and the Suns, so maybe it might be a different kettle of fish when they take on the Saints.
Who do you like, Al?
I think I've tipped the Saints as well, but both teams obviously going really well, better than we probably expected. And one player to highlight at the Bombers is Will Setterfield's been a sensational pickup. They've got him playing as an inside mid, which is where he always probably should have played, and he's their number one midfielder now. So, and they got him for a future 4th rounder, so tick for the Bombers recruiters.
And someone's going for the Bombers, are they?
I'm sticking with Brad Scott.
Why?
I just think, no forward line, and he's made a pretty good mix of it and kicked 100 points 2 weeks in a row. So I think their system's stacking up, Jason. I like to disagree with you too. So I actually
system
don't
this week.
All right, well, it's the first 2 weeks. We doubted Ross Lyon. This week, Jason and Al are backing him in. Jason, the man you appointed to lead Hawthorn, is now coaching against them. Can Clark get it done against his apprentice, Sam Mitchell, on Saturday in Tassie?
It's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, normally we would say Hawthorn has an advantage at Launceston, but given how often Clarko played there, I think he knows the ground pretty well. The difference here for me is that North have got players in really good form. We know Larky's kicking goals up forward, but Davey Giniak in the middle of the ground, even young Sheasel off half-back. I think they're playing a confident brand of footy, and that might stand him in good stead. Yeah,
I think Larky's leading the Coleman at the moment, and probably get on him to kick a few this weekend as well. Hawthorn's defence basically worst in every defensive category. They're obviously a work in progress there with the rebuild, but last week you look at what they gave up. Logan McDonald kicked 6 goals and Joel Amati helped himself to 4 as well, so you'd think Suva might bag a couple.
But you're saying the team defence is not great, but their defence in terms of their back 6 is pretty strong.
I think in all the categories they're not looking good. Sicily's taken a lot of marks.
Okay, so
you down.
I've actually been whacked twice in this segment, so good chat, you blokes. There you have it. We are unanimous in tipping Clarko to go 3-0 for the season.
Footy is life. It's loyalty, rivalry, love and pain. Footy is everything. That's why we've made a betting brand for footy fans. That's better. Chances are you're about to lose.
Would the real Port Adelaide please stand up? Please stand up.
Slim Shady work from you.
Slim Shady. I love it. Al, do you like Slim Shady? Because I'm coming straight to you for your rendition of that. But we are looking at the big showdown in Adelaide. Port Adelaide. We're not sure which Port Adelaide is going to turn up, but Adelaide have been in good form. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I think I'd rather talk about the footy and the stats. But, inconsistency is plaguing a lot of teams in the AFL. And sort of Port, we had, 2 very different teams from round 1 to round 2. And Adelaide, it's within games. In 3 quarters, they're plus 57 points on their opposition. The problem is in the other 5, they're minus 108. So makes it very hard to tip. But I think Ken Hinkley will continue his good run in showdowns.
Being in position to win both games, Adelaide, had they kicked straight. Their inaccuracy in front of goal is absolutely killing them. So they would feel that they've let themselves down. They're going to be up for this one. But Port Adelaide, yes, they were terrific round 1. They ran into a speed bump when they hit Collingwood at the G, but a lot of teams are going to do that. I just think there's a little bit more class for Kenny to play with, particularly in the midfield for Port Adelaide, and they might bounce back. But if they're not on their game, the Crows will get them.
What about the tagging issue? We've got Rory Laird, 39 disposals. Like, is he one they should be tagging?
Well, Lachie Jones, I think they probably need to give him a rest this week. I don't know if they'll go there again. But Connor Rosie's another one who can perhaps damage them more going the other way. He had 34 touches last time he played the Crows, so he could have a big one here.
All right, sorry, Crows. We're all with the power in the SA Showdown. Gents, the Friday night game between the Magpies and the Tigers is an absolute humdinger. It's like an old spaghetti western. They'll be in the streets just firing at each other. Bang, 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 bang. Jason, who are you going with?
I think Collingwood might have a few more bullets to fire, Dicko. The big issue for Richmond, Al, is the number of good players that are out. So we know Nathan Broad's been suspended, but Martin won't be playing, Jacob Hopper's not playing, Jaden Short's not playing. They're losing a lot of talent now. They've got some depth, Richmond, but they're players that I don't think they can quite replace.
And, yeah, they're running into a red-hot Collingwood, as we know. One man who I think, if Richmond is to have a chance, who has to have a massive game is Tom Lynch. And he did last time he played Collingwood. He had 25 disposals, 11 marks and kicked 6. So you'd need to repeat that, you think, for Richmond to be a chance here.
He's becoming a consistent goal kicker. So it's at 3 or more goals in his last 7 games. It's a pretty good effort.
And the Tigers, so you talk about defence, like no one can defend Collingwood, but they're third in the competition.
Yeah, I mean, Richmond we talked about inconsistency, the draw round 1, and then last week they just absolutely went to sleep for a quarter. But for the other 3, they looked pretty good. Back to that Richmond style that we know Damien Hardwick loves.
So it is interesting, though. You've got Collingwood averaging 130 points a week, and you've got Richmond conceding 67. So if we split the difference, if you do your math quickly, it comes up at 98.5 points, Dicko.
Oh, yeah.
That might still be enough, I suspect, to win the game. So even if they do, chop them down by 5 goals, I think they can still kick a winning score, Collingwood.
See, that was even a dig at me about maths, because I was a scholar at Assumption. All right, Al, the Demons... Yeah, I was.
You attended, at least, on occasion.
The Demons and the Swans at the MCG. Well, it's shaping up as the acid test for both teams. Tell us why and who you're siding with in this game.
I've tipped Melbourne. It's a pretty hard one to tip. I guess you go with the home side. But Clayton Oliver is one guy who's just super consistent. He actually loves playing against Sydney. You think they're a pretty hard matchup, but he's averaged 30 disposals in his past 6 games against them. So I think he'll have another big one this weekend.
They went missing, Melbourne's midfield last week, unexpectedly. I don't know why, because it's such a high-quality midfield. I don't expect them to be missing 2 weeks in a row. So I think they're going to really take it up to Sydney. And Sydney, we don't know how well they're going to go. Why? Who have they beaten?
No one.
Gold Coast and Hawthorn. So they haven't had that test yet. Until they do, and I'm not suggesting they won't pass the test, because any team coached by John Longmire, they're going to be competitive, but I just think Melbourne might bounce back in this one.
It's a nice early draw for the Swans coming off the smashing in the grand final, how they're going to react. So, well done, AFL. You've eased them in beautifully. All right, Jason, we're giving the Dockers another chance, are we? Or are we picking the Eagles over in the West?
I didn't like this game either, I've got to be brutally honest. I did tip West Coast last week and I was happy they got the job done for me, but I'm going for Freo, and I'm not really sure why. The Eagles lack a little bit of consistency, and they had their moments last week. They threatened to let the opposition back into the game at one stage when they looked like they had it parcelled up. Freo have been deplorable, and I just think a team that finished, in the top 6 last year has to bounce back at some stage, and they've copped a heap over in the West this week. I mean, a serious heap. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see what sort of response they come up with.
And one player that's under the pump is, Luke Jackson. They're getting into him in the West.
See, that's harsh. That's harsh.
Well, probably Sean Darcy could help him out. He was absolutely putrid last week, single-handedly destroyed my Supercoach team. But he's coming up against the West Coast that doesn't have Nick Natanui. He had 55 hit-outs last time he played them, so I think there's a bit of acid on him to really put in a big one this week.
What about the way the media's attacking Luke Jackson, though? I don't get it. Don't attack the player. It's not his fault that they pay mega bucks in a big long-term deal. I mean, he's accepting that because it's going to set him up for life. But understand what you're getting. He hasn't been a superstar yet. He was second fiddle behind Max Gawn. He's played 50 games for a young ruckman, and they think he's got to go over there and just start winning games for them off the bat. I mean, be practical, Dicko.
We've got this upside down. That was Dunstall's don't argue.
No, it wasn't. I just think everyone's pointing the finger at him. He's a young kid that's played 50 games, a ruckman that's going to develop, but gee whiz, go easy, fellas.
Go easy. All right. Okay, there you have it. Let's have a look at some...
Did you tell us why you were tipping?
Of course I'm going with West Coast.
Why?
New game plan.
Why?
Simo responded and said, listen, I'm going to tinker the game plan.
And what did he do with it?
He won a game of footy. And he's got a health and fit list, so that's how we're going to have it. All right, let's have a look at some of the other games in round 3. We're all picking the Blues and the Cats, but I'm alone. As I said, I'm going with the Swans and the Eagles, Jason, in the upset. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Al.
Pleasure.
Outstanding effort from you guys. Thanks for joining us on Fox Sports Lab AFL. Make sure you subscribe below and follow us on socials, and we'll see you next week.
Footy is life. It's loyalty, rivalry, love and pain. Footy is everything. That's why we've made a betting brand for footy fans. That's better. Chances are you're about to lose.